We're just a couple of minutes away. And I've turned on the mic so that people can hear us. So do not start swearing, Owen Casey Stevens.
Yeah, now is when I would start.
Right? Just start swearing. I always wonder what swearing a blue streak meant.
Well, any level of adult content is often considered to be blue. Comedians will talk about working blue.
Looks like we've got some eyeballs joining us. Give it just a couple more seconds. Well, Owen, are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Ooh, there we are. It's Thursday, somewhere adjacent to 2 p.m. Pacific, and you know what that means. It's time for ThursdAGE. This is the official live stream of Green Ronin Publishing with the unflappable Owen Casey Stevens, lead developer for Fantasy Age and the disembodied voice of the well and truly flapped Troy Hewitt. Now broadcasting live from Green Ronin's YouTube and Facebook pages, unless you're watching this later, of course. Would you join me in saying hello to literally the nicest guy in the biz, Owen Casey Stevens? Hi, Owen.
Hi, folks. Hi, Troy.
How are you doing?
I'm actually in pretty good shape considering that the sky broke last night and dumped the largest hail I have ever seen down on our home for like 5 minutes straight.
I was watching the social medias and I heard that very thing. It sounded like you were in a cacophony of a timpani. Is that a thing? What is a timpani? Is that like some kind of a musical thing?
Yeah, it is. Cacophony is good.
Okay.
No, it was loud. It started by just sounding like, maybe a few rocks had been kicked up off the road onto the side of the house, and then a few seconds later you had to shout to make yourself heard. We got off lucky in that we don't seem to have broken windows or car windows, but we have friends and family that did not get off nearly that lucky. And we haven't got anyone up on the roof yet, which may well still show some damage.
Gotcha. Well, I'm glad you survived intact. I will also note that, hey, everybody, we've got Jason Waltman's sidled up. We've got Nicholas Morrow, Terry Advent. Hello, everybody. As you pop into the chat, say howdy. And we will do so as well. Owen, you are looking very trimmed, shaved and shorn.
Yes. Yeah. Now that I'm fully vaccinated, I splurged and went to a barber.
Nice.
And it tells you something about how hard hit the barber business has been that I walked in and, I just moved back to Oklahoma after 6 years away. So I haven't been to a barber shop here in 6-7 years. And so I asked, hey, are you all set up for credit cards? Because not everyone in Oklahoma is, and they didn't have the little credit card logos in their window. And there was just one barber there who also turns out to be the owner, and one guy that he was just brushing off the neck of with a brush as he was getting up. And the barber / owner said, no, I'm not, but I can shave you now and you can come pay me later. And I'm like, well, this is a man who is not turning away any business for any reason.
For any reason at all.
And I was like, no, it's fine. I got cash. I can take care of it. I was just curious. But and then LJ, my wife, went and ran errands. So I sat there for like half an hour and no one else came by. So he and I just chatted about the pandemic.
As you do, these are centers of community engagement. So, I definitely can see that happening. And congratulations on being totally vaxxed.
one of the things that fascinates me is talking to people about, their careers and their jobs and their life experiences and how they got there. And, he literally had a fluffy dog and became a dog groomer, because he had to learn how to trim his own dog. And then from dog grooming, he got hired by someone whose dog he groomed to go work at a hair salon. And then he worked at a hair salon for a while, but he didn't really like it because he was not the boss. And unlike dogs, he mentioned, at a hair salon, people can talk back to you and dogs don't. And then a nearby barber shop came up for sale, so he bought it and is much happier now.
Well, I would imagine so, and that does explain your illustrious coat.
Yeah, no, they gave him some little biscuits, and as long as I eat them and some greenies, I'm told that I should also probably trot around more, but the natural oils get released, so yeah.
I love it. Also, if you're joining us today, I know we've got some people. So we've got, let's see. Nicholas Morrow asked a good question here. Has a hailstorm been statted?
I don't think we have a hailstorm specifically statted up in Fantasy Age. One of the things that I love about Fantasy Age, especially with the core rulebook and its advanced test rules, is that you can do something like say, okay, I want to create a hazard. Here's a hazard. I want it to be this level of difficulty, and we've got a chart to help you guide that out. So, a hailstorm, just because people are higher level, a hailstorm shouldn't be more dangerous, but you can throw more dangerous hailstorms at them. Like last night was a national news level freak hailstorm, the worst hailstorm I personally have ever seen. And I have 43 years in grade here in Tornado Alley. So I've seen some hailstorms, but this one was amazing. So you can just say, if you want to throw a more difficult hailstorm at people. But anyway, you set a target number and just have consequences for failed checks, right? Like you guys need to find shelter. Here are the tests that we're going to have. Oh, you failed. Everyone takes a dice 6 of damage. It's really easy to come up with stuff on the fly as soon as you are reasonably comfortable with the base rules of this is a test. Everything works off a test. Throw damage at things. We have added some conditions to the core rulebook, which literally came out of a discussion where we discovered that we had a couple of things that made you blind in the basic rulebook for Fantasy Age, and no rules for what being blind meant. So we don't want to create, here are 37 conditions that you have to memorize in order to play the game.
Yeah.
There's this really thin path where we want to define just enough stuff that we can refer to it and make your life easier, and not have to find so much stuff that you can't remember what you're looking at or what you're looking for, what the modifiers are. But like not being able to see, that comes up fairly often in action adventure. Wanting to be able to say, hey, you have set someone on fire, or people are frightened, or there's a morale penalty, that kind of thing. The Pathfinder role-playing game famously for a long time had not defined the condition dead, which means that there were things that would tell you you have been killed, you are dead. But there was no rule that said dead people could not wander around and take actions. And you want, to a certain extent, to trust people to know that when we say you're dead, hey, you're dead. But you then can get into legitimate interpretational rules questions, like if a spell says it affects an object and I'm dead, I'm probably not a person anymore because you can't charm me, right? I'm dead. But am I an object? And if I am an object, will mend object repair this corpse? And that's the sort of thing where, it kind of doesn't matter what a GM makes as a ruling, but if we can have a few things well defined and link back to them and use them as examples, here is, this is what this condition looks like, this is how these rules work, then again, as soon as you're comfortable with those basics, it's easy to say, oh, I'm going to use the advanced test system, and you're going to fight during a stampede, or you're going to have to deal with a hailstorm, or we're going to use it for an investigation because you all are trying to figure out who it is that has been running around poisoning the royal werewolf family's cheese. Just as a way to move the adventure forward and to give you enough tools that you can make up your own stuff.
Jason Waltman says, no, you mostly dead. Scott Alford says, how about this? Hail in the shape of D-Force. Ouch.
Yeah.
Don't step on those. This is great. Okay, so we do have some things to talk about.
We absolutely do.
With some really good things to talk about. Do you wanna lead us in? Do you wanna take us there?
Yeah. So we have made an announcement today, and Malcolm Sheppard makes the announcement, who is our modern age developer, that on May 13th, we will be releasing a Fantasy Age supplement for Homeric Age Adventures called Fantasy Age Trojan War. And this is inspired by a book that Green Ronin put out in 2005 by Aaron Rosenberg. So we're saying this book, designed by Aaron Rosenberg with Malcolm Sheppard and Steve Kenson, because the original Trojan War book was for the D20 system. It was designed for that class level based book. And while we have been informed by it and we've used a lot of that material, we have not just removed the word fighter for 5th level fighter and put in the word warrior. This is a real redesign, not just for Fantasy Age, it is partially that, but also for the fact that it's been 16 years. So for example, if you want to know the basics of how the Trojan War fell out and what different people think happened during the war, and read the Odyssey, et cetera, that is super easy for you to do online these days, especially since we're releasing this in PDF and POD. If you are the target audience for this book, you have access to a computer. So we don't need to describe the history and mythology in ways that are better served by resources on the web, and whatever resource you're comfortable with, right? You can decide, hey, what I really want to do is watch the Blood of Zeus anime on Netflix and use that as my guideline for how I'm going to do my Trojan War. Great. We're not telling you you're doing it right. We're not telling you you're doing it wrong. If you're having a good time, you're doing it right. Or you can say, okay, I'm going to order a 700-page book that will go into the Trojan War and its mythic and historic implications in way more detail than any Green Ronin product was ever going to do. We're leaving that to you. And we are trying to give you the game mechanical pieces, kind of like what I was just talking about for Fantasy Age in general. Give you the game mechanical pieces to build the game you want to build out of.
Chair Sanchez says it's inspired by Troy. No, it really is. Yeah, I'm that old. That's when I lost my bod. It's been hovering around for that long. Skirts and sandals. SNS, says Terry Advent. I love that. Jason,
I always used to refer to it as sandals and sorcery, but
that works too. I like it. We have a comment here. What a genius move in both conception and execution. That's from Malcolm.
Yeah, Malcolm pitched this to Green Ronin. He was looking at stuff that could be put together and that would be a good fit for a PDF POD product. He pitched it, he outlined it, it seemed brilliant. We said, go ahead. I obviously took a look at it as the Fantasy Age developer. It's really good, exciting stuff. And we've been talking for a while on the show. People have been asking, hey, have you ever considered releasing like Fantasy Age campaign books? And I kept going, yes, we have considered it, and we'll have more to talk about that later. So this is the first bolt in that volley, and we will see how people react to this, what sales are like, what kind of feedback we get. But the other thing is that this was carefully designed with knowledge of both the basic rulebook and the upcoming core rulebook in it. So this book is specifically designed to work with either of those. So if you are wanting to buy it now and you're afraid, well, I don't want to get it because they'll do a new version for the core rulebook. Nope, this is it. This is the version.
This is the version. Nice.
Yeah. So if you are sticking with the basic rulebook and you don't want anything else, this book is for you. If you have the basic rulebook and you are going to move up just as soon as you can, this book is for you. If you're waiting for the core rulebook to do any Fantasy Age gaming, don't wait. Get started. But you could still buy this, and this is not a complete game, right? It's a campaign setting, but it does have a lot of game material in it, specifically talking about the magic and Homeric tales. We've got charm and cursing and poison arcanas, and I'm super excited about the cursing arcana, because when I saw the cursing arcana, I was like, that is such an obvious addition to Fantasy Age that I had just never thought about. And then we've got new magic items, from herbs to the head of Medusa. And in the announcement, Malcolm specifically notes, yes, the head of Medusa doesn't appear in Homer, but the book just wouldn't be complete without it.
Truth. Truth. Nicholas Morrow asks, is there an Owen Arcana?
There is not at this point an Owen Arcana, although that's a great name for an article. Although I would always be stumbling over calling it Unearthed Arcana, which would not be good. But it's still a great name for an article, or even a series of articles. So you never know what might come from an off-the-cuff comment.
That is very true, especially on ThursdAGE, especially with Owen Casey Stevens, the unflappable. Yeah. So let's see. Jason Waltman says, Zeus versus all other chief god in a Mortal Kombat. Okay.
I actually have friends coming over to watch Mortal Kombat this evening on HBO Max because we're all fully vaccinated now. So about Zeus versus, we've got a chapter on religion and the gods in this, which talks about rules for divine intervention, and ways to let you face down belligerent gods without compromising on their immortality, and some rules for tracking divine favor, and some specific relationship things that we've put in so we can know, does this god like you, does this god dislike you, whatever. But we do not have a whole slew of game stats for here are the game stats for Zeus, because while you do need to be able to face down gods, it's something that happens. We don't want you using this as a bestiary of new things to stab, because that is not in the Homeric tradition. And in fact, we did not do a whole slew of hero game stats either. We're going to do a little online articles as the book comes out. But it's, for example, something I would love to see someone tackle for the Creators Alliance would be to say, hey, here's my take on 32 Homeric heroes, or the Argonauts or whatever. And some of that is a matter of size, right? We're trying to do a 64 or so page book, but also because the main objective here is to say, hey, this is how you make your characters and get in there. Here are the new rules you need. But we've got Medusas and things like stats for regular monsters in the bestiary, and we didn't want to also duplicate a bunch of material except as needed.
Right. And now that the rules, the guidance around handling and interacting with gods and sort of are you in their favor and that kind of stuff are the same rules that apply to you and I when people want to talk to us and when they want to. So everyone will be excited to read that and to learn, how we expect to be treated from this point on. I'm looking forward to that. What
excites me about those rules is that you can take them and apply them to non-Trojan settings if you want. So this is a case where we thought we need these rules elements for this kind of story to be told. But once they're in your hands, if you decide I want to use these things which are adapted from the Piety rules for different campaign settings, if I want to dump something in Freeport, or I'm adapting my favorite realms that no one remembers to Fantasy Age, for example, these rules will allow you to have a very different feel for the relationship between mortals and gods than just using things in the basic core rulebook.
Well, Jason asks, so no fighting a 6-head Hydra?
No, by all means, fight a 6-head Hydra. Just don't expect a new set of rules for Hydras. See, we've got these books already as I go digging through my pile of references. You already have a Fantasy Age bestiary. I don't swear that there's a Hydra in here, but I just can't imagine we didn't do one. Let's see. I don't see one. So yeah, we would need a Hydra somewhere. But as I have mentioned more than once, it is easy to take something like, you can literally take an octopus, treat the tentacles as heads, and whammo, you've got a Hydra. We also have, there's a many-headed modifying monster rule in here. So you could take anything you liked the look of, an ocean worm, soul harvester, thin man, thunderlord, tree man, anything set of stats, and slap many-headed on it, and you've got a Hydra. We do have a chimera in here, right? So we've got some of the traditional monsters covered, and I could again see doing, maybe if there's demand, a Trojan War bestiary down the line, because that's something that could apply to a lot of different games. But we've got minotaurs and a lot of, and weirdly, actually, the Trojan War itself was mostly about people stabbing people. Frequently, people stabbing people while gods gave a thumbs up or thumbs down. It was not mostly about Medusas and Titans and Krakens and such. But feel free to add those. It's just add them like you would for any other campaign. We don't need special Hydra rules. Although I am now thinking I may want to write up a Hydra for something.
Well, if you remember, we did a Hey Owen stat this, which was a many-headed. I think people were calling it a sea tube.
Yep.
So there was that, yeah. So I mean that's kind of a Hydra, that many-headed sea tube.
The whole point of having the modifying monster rules in the Fantasy Age Bestiary is instead of trying to sell you 6 350-page books with every possible variant of a monster all written up, we're trying to give you the tools to make the monsters you need when you need them.
Hey, that is very kind of us and thoughtful. So you don't have the many-headed expenses. And I love this. Malcolm says, people stabbing people are the luckiest people in the world. One of my favorite songs. Here's a question that Jason Waltman has.
Malcolm has more experience with people stabbing people than I do, so I will have to take his word for it.
So there's a really great questions coming in. Jer Sanchez, who says, we love stabbing. Let's see. Jason asks, what are the rules for realm hopping? What are there rules or sort of guidance?
So Trojan War presents a specific setup, but if you have been paying attention to Freeport, which we've done over the years, it is frequently talked about the fact that Freeport is sitting on one of the coils of Yig, and that you can have nearer and further coils, and that navigators can sail the coils. And we don't discuss that in any great detail in Trojan War. In fact, I don't think we mentioned it at all. But it is something that we are going to be talking about in the core rulebook. Or you could pick up Modern Age and Threefold, which has a lot of really cool rules for reality hopping. So we don't want to repeat ourselves too much. I see the Trojan War supplement primarily being used one of two ways, and that is either, hey, I want to run a Sandals and Sorcery style game, so I want rules for bronze armor and running around bare-legged and curse arcana and having a level of happiness and unhappiness that gods have with me, or that doesn't mean you couldn't run a game where you are moving from reality to reality, and you pop up in some specific Trojan War-esque reality. But if you're doing that, I presume you're doing that because you, the GM, want that to happen. So then I don't want to write rules that make it more difficult for you to tell the story you want to tell. So decide how you want people to reality hop, right? Are they on a ship and the ship is hit by a storm? Or are they on a raft going down a river and they end up in the land of the lost? We kind of don't care. The question is, what story do you want to tell? What do you want your setup to be for the players to tell their stories in?
Real quick,
yes, we'll touch on it more in the core rulebook, but it's not a crucial part of being able to use this supplement.
Looks like we might be having a little internet instability, but I think we're back on track right now, so apologies to those folks. If you can see us, say hello.
Let us know you're still hearing us.
We're back. Thank you, Terry. So Scott says, main question we all need answered. Do we blame Helen of Troy, Paris, Zeus, or Aphrodite for the combat that will ensue?
You can read the book, but the one person I absolutely do not blame is Helen.
Say that one more time.
Read the book on our take on that, but also just that's another place where you can read history and make your own call. But the one person I absolutely don't blame for this is Helen.
Now, you sound very resolute in that. Why so?
So, I mean, Helen is a demigod, right? Helen is the offspring of Zeus. And Helen does not, she's not the one that, she runs from her husband who she didn't really want to marry. And that's kind of it. I personally think a divorce should not involve launching 1,000 ships. So
Truth.
you can talk about the links of kinship and whether it was a mortal insult and how convenient was it for people to want to have a war. But I just find it way too convenient to say that Helen's face launched 1,000 ships. Helen was not on any of those 1,000 ships. She was not holding anything that would destroy the nations that had any of those 1,000 ships. She did not represent a clear and present danger to the nations and homes of any of those ships. So if one ship with her husband had showed up and yelled at the door and they needed to get a therapist out there or have someone say, look, dude, she's just not that into you, we can do that. But the blame Helen is based on the idea that Helen was Menelaus's property, and I don't buy that.
I knew this is where you were going just because you were on Casey Stevens, and so we will. Oh, you know what I just realized?
No, I don't.
In addition, in addition to thanking you for sharing this, I also realized that it wasn't the many-headed; it was just one C tube. From last week's Hey Owen stat this, I believe it was last week, but so add 5 or so tubes to that one.
That's why we have the many-headed adjustment rules.
There you go. 1 or 2 through 6, whatever. Don't believe the myths, Jason. And I also like the just looking back on history, we can redigest, we can shift our thinking, we can sort of embrace the fact that the world is a different place now, and a smarter place, I would say.
Well, and one of the things that Malcolm, I think, did an excellent job with this book was recontextualizing it with 16 years of afterthought on how we want to present our fictional game worlds, right? This is based on real world mythology, but real world mythology is mythology, right? So if you don't think that there were actually Greek gods overseeing the battle and an actual giant horse was built and that Ulysses was actually cursed and ran into sorcerers, et cetera, if you think that those are stories told for certain socio-political purposes, then when we tell those stories, we get to make those choices. So, I mean, that's why, for example, we've got rules for Amazons in this book. There is no reason you can't take the iconic stories of Troy and recontextualize them to tell the stories you want. So I think it's important to not see the way that fiction has been told before as being a straitjacket for what we can do with it at our game tables. And we're talking about hydras and griffins and gods and spell casting. So if you want to decide that your Trojan War is all about bunny centaurs defending their Troy warren against the Greek mule folk, whatever, go for it. No one is going to rip the book out of it, and no one from Green or Need any. And if anyone does, you're playing with the wrong people. No one's going to rip the book from your hands and say, no, you're playing it wrong. If you decide that Troy is TROI and that Helen and Troy were two women that ran from the patriarchy and found defense in a city willing to treat them like people, go for it. We don't have to repeat the same version of the same tales over and over and over. And in fact, if we did, it would get boring. Anytime you see someone adapt these things, they're always trying to take some new take on it. And I think we need to take the power of the new take to be able to create the stories that appeal to us and that are representative of and nurturing to our audience, be that people that we're selling a book to or 5 friends sitting around a kitchen table in the basement.
I love that, and I do love the consideration for not just the immediate person who's purchasing, but what this does in the wider ripple of storytelling in the space. I think that's very thoughtful, Owen. I appreciate that. Now, I'm not sure how much you want to get into this because I'm not sure that we've really tried to flap your historian take on stuff. But Scott Alford asks, who would you have chosen given Paris's choice from Zeus, Athena, Aphrodite, or Hera?
if I'd had the golden apple, who would I have handed it to?
Yeah.
I like to believe that as a good Trojan young man out and about, I would have had a knife, and I would have told the goddesses that it was far be it from me, a humble mortal, to decide which woman is greatest, much be it which divine woman is greatest. And I'd take my knife out and I'd slice the apples in 3 parts, and I put it before them. And one of them would probably turn me into a toad, but at least I would not have started a war over it.
Holy smokes. Do you see that, my friends? You remain unflapped, and I remain impressed. You know what we're going to do, though? Listen, everyone's got a lot of questions about this. People are very excited. People are very interested. And I got to tell you, I flipped through the proof, and it's good. It's
really
real,
good.
real good. Real good. So rather than talk it all out today on ThursdAGE, how's about we bring Malcolm on to this program?
I absolutely think we should have Malcolm on here. I think Malcolm did an amazing job with this. Malcolm has been one of the people that I've been watching what he's writing and reading what he says, which I know is backwards, and carefully trying to learn what you can do with the age system from. So I'd love to have him on the show, and I would love for the fantasy age people to get to talk directly to the guy that took what was a good book, right? I mean, Aaron did a great job with it, but took it and updated it not just for rule system, but conceptually for the place it is in time and space. I think a lot of people would have some really good questions to ask him. And if not, I'll pester him with questions.
Well, guess what? He's agreed. He's going to join us on release day, which is, did we say the 13th?
13th.
Yeah, the 13th of next month. We're not there yet.
Nope, 2 weeks.
2 weeks away. We will have Malcolm on this very program. We will pepper him with questions, and frankly, we'll try to flap him.
No, we won't. We will be very kind and supportive to Malcolm. We'll make no effort to flap him.
But I just a little.
I'm not asking someone to come on the show and then immediately try and flap them. If nothing else, you got to lure them in with a couple of easy appearances first.
Fair enough. We'll ease them in and then turn the temperature up over time, and before you know it, he'll be flapped. No, he's also an unflappable sort. But
I mean, just on one of the Green Renine Facebook groups today, someone was saying, "Ooh, Owen should talk about this on ThursdAGE today when we make these announcements." I was like, "We plan to," and I'm glad to have done it. But I'm not the guy that wrote this book. I'm not the person that adapted this book. Malcolm is the one who's been arms deep in the brilliant work of this book. So I think having him on should be really exciting for everyone. And by that point, you might have had a chance to buy the book and flip through it, or at the very least, read the announcement on greenrenine.com/blog and have questions that was more in depth about what you want to know about this book.
Absolutely. And no, we won't flap you, Malcolm. But, questions like what sort of mechanical elements will be in this book, and do you know is Owen a demigod in this book? What effect, if any, will this book have on any other classes? All of those questions, we'll cover them on that program. Though I'm a little curious. Dustin asks about that. What, if any, effect is this going to have on any? This is an addition. This isn't a reinvention of rules, right? I mean, it's.
Yeah. Well, so mostly what this is additions, right? So we have new arcana and new specializations and some new playable heritages. So we've got new talents, athletics and shield formation style and swift-footed style, and charioteer specializations, etc. But those are options that the classes get. The classes themselves aren't changing.
Right.
And one of the reasons for that is that if you take the way that we handle the class in the basic rulebook, they have access to these options, and you would use the way those options are accessed in the basic rulebooks to interact with this book. We handle classes somewhat differently in the core rulebook, but they still get access to talents and specializations. We still have heritages, etc. And so if you were using that book, those classes would interact with these rules the way that book describes. So we very specifically don't want to say, for example, warriors now get this instead of that, because then we would have had to say basic warriors do this, core warriors do this, and that's exactly what I'm trying to stay away from. The whole basis of the core rulebook not being a new addition, just an expansion of options and improvements, quality of life improvements to how the age system interacts with players and scenarios. We want to stick with saying these are talents, these are specializations, these are arcana. And yes, there are new arcana, but a mage still only gets access to so many, and so many spells within each arcana. So if you ended up saying, well, my character is going to take charm, cursing, and poison arcanas, that means you're not taking fate, fire, and healing, right? So it's just an expansion of options for the classes that already access these categories of rules.
You're welcome, Dustin. Hey, so let's do this. Let's pull apart the announcement and let's move into a separate topic of just an update generally on where we're at with the pending update to the core rulebook.
So I am running towards having a completed playtest adjusted draft, which should be ready to be handed over to other age experts within the company, Chris Pramus in particular, next week. So that is the main thing I'm going to be working on for all of the next 7 or 8 or 9 days, because after 9 days, it's not next week anymore. And then, those people take a look at it, and we may have some back and forth on specific details, and then it'll go off to editing. So, I've got an adventure to go over. So we'll have a new starting adventure in there. We've got the new setting, which we haven't talked about at all, and I've been holding on to that for a while, so I'm not going to tease it now. But I will say that setting very specifically will have some discussion of being able to go from sort of one world to another within the cosmology of that setting, so that if you are looking at things we've done before, if you're like, okay, well, I have age rules for, I've got an age adventure for Freeport, so can I go to Freeport? Yes, we can make sure that you can get there. Ooh, I want to go to Trojan War. Well, you can take this cosmology and say this is how you travel between the Trojan War setting and our assumed setting, which, we're trying to set up a place that's interesting and in keeping with the tones and the themes that we have hit on Fantasy Age before, but that we can also do new stuff with, and that I hope to make the sort of ground zero anchor point for doing more adventure support once our core rulebook is out.
Okay, well, that is excellent. I had noted that you mentioned, you talked a bit about sort of you had mentioned some themes and some sort of subjects that kind of bubbled to the top from feedback. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So one of the things that you're always looking at is sort of, there are two categories of stuff. So one is things like, hey, why do envoys have no starting equipment? And the answer for why in the playtest do envoys have no starting equipment is I forgot. That's why there's no starting equipment for envoys. So, maybe 24 people have pointed out that envoys have no starting equipment, and that's great. I would rather 24 people point it out than 0. And you never know what someone else will have caught. So there are some very concrete things where I'm like, oh, yeah, we did that wrong. Okay, so, we might have picked that up in final development past like what I'm doing now. It might have been picked up in editing, but it's great that was caught by playtesters. There are then things that are more like what seems fun. So we have rearranged how ancestries and heritages work a fair amount, and most of the feedback on that was quite positive, but a lot of people said, hey, humans just feel boring. Now, that's not to say you can't make a fun human character, but that a lot of people looking at it had a feeling that humans were being specifically set up to be, white bread, to be very generic, to be uninteresting, which was not the intent at all. I was just trying not to get crazy with it. But that feedback, which was quite common, humans just aren't interesting enough. And that's not a question of power balance or not being able to do anything, or I can't make a human character that's useful. It's just that humans don't have anything going for them that I can't get somewhere else. And you specifically talk about humans being adaptable and flexible and being able to put themselves in a lot of different environments. And there's just nothing in the book that supports that. So that's a case where we looked at that and we're like, okay, well, if humans are supposed to be flexible and adaptable, and that is one of the things that we're driving home as one of the themes for why you find humans everywhere, and to a certain extent why humans can be hard to pin down, right? The act of adaptability, once you have adapted, it just makes you look different from those other humans. So we're trying to support the idea that humans come in a lot of different types. So human is not, if you are human, you are this size and this weight. And I am certainly not going to tell people that if you are less than 5 feet tall, you're not human anymore, right? That's what we're trying to get away from. But it is possible to say this trend towards adaptability, be that because of your society or how you're raised or whatever, that's a thing that we can make part of the package that we hand out to humans. And we can have some be sort of essential, that all humans, because we are bipeds and our brains work a certain way and we've got thumbs, etc., have some adaptable options. And then others are cultural heritages that you could, if you ended up wanting to say, well, I'm a dwarf that was raised by humans, we've got rules for multiple heritages where you say, okay, this part of you is being dwarven. That if dwarves see in the dark because they've got a different eye structure, then they have a different eye structure. And a lot of this stuff is cultural, and you can pick it however you want. And even if you're a dwarf raised by humans, there's a way to take over that part of things. So that is a place where we were very specifically looking at bringing all of the heritages in line with one another in terms of having something going for them that makes you think, well, I like this thing, so I want to play that heritage, without ever saying, if you want to be a warrior, dwarves make the best warriors. We don't want to do that. We want, if you decide I want to be an elven envoy who has a background, was raised by crooks, we don't want to do anything that penalizes you for having that perfectly reasonable and interesting idea. So it's a bit of a balancing act, but it's one of the places where getting 50 different groups playtesting and a bunch of different playtest reports and a bunch of people filled out surveys, and we had a lot of feedback and even discussions on the Green Ronin All Ages Discord, which I recommend people go sign up for and look at those great conversations if you haven't already. That's a place where we're able to get a broad range of how are we doing that and where have we maybe missed the mark a little and we could improve it.
Excellent. And we will provide that link here shortly. But yeah, the Discord is a great place. That's the grad run. It's really a community Discord, but we support it. We're hanging out there. You've got developers that are chilling and sort of waiting to see your questions. And let's see. I don't know the answer to this one. Scott Alfred asks, I had a friend approach me about Fantasy Age as they really like the idea of the system. This friend is Spanish. Is there any way that you could translate the book?
So normally the way, and I'm not speaking specifically to any plans for Fantasy Age, but normally the way that translations happen is that some publisher who publishes in that language comes to a different publisher for a book that they want to translate and says, I'm interested in doing a Spanish language translation of this book, and then you work out terms. And that's sort of above my pay grade as far as Green Ronin
as well,
goes. Now
yeah,
it's a little interesting because I was literally just today working with a Portuguese publisher for Rogue Genius Games products to be translated into Portuguese. So that's a thing that is being looked at. But there's a good reason to have that be something that is taken on by people who work in the industry natively in that language. One thing is that they've got a much better idea what game will be of interest, what the slots are, how to market it, how many copies you should print. We are, I would love to be able to present all these rules in every language available on the planet, but that's just not practical for us. And I don't think anyone at Green Ronin is a native Spanish speaker, and you really want a native speaker with a strong grasp of English to be able to take it and not just do a literal translation, but to localize it into Spanish.
Yeah, manage the colloquials, that kind of thing.
Yeah. our good friend Stan does localization of Japanese manga, for example. So I've managed to talk to him about that work and what it's like, and why a literal translation is a great starting point, but it's a terrible end point. You have to have someone who has expertise, some knowledge of both cultures, some knowledge of both languages, but who's natively grounded in the language that you want the book to end up in, so that they know that everything makes sense for that native language. So I would love to see a Fantasy Age core rulebook get translated into Spanish. I don't think that the basic rulebook is a Spanish translation, although if I'm wrong, I'm going to be embarrassed by that.
We'll find out. We'll find out for sure. We'll find out. And we'll also find out a little bit more about the process, and maybe have some thoughts from that side of the biz.
But certainly, there are people that translate Green Ronin products. So if you are a native Spanish or Portuguese or French or any other speaker and you want to see these books translated, find a company in your area that you think does a good job and ask them to contact Green Ronin and see if they can license it.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to talk with them. Dustin asks, sorry if I may ask another question. Dustin, you get the most polite question asker of the day award. So enjoy that and tell your mom. But I'm very interested in publishing as part of the Creators Alliance. What advice can you give to people, and what are some of the things we should look out for? Well, if you're interested, and I know many people have done this, and I want to thank you, and you've got the templates and all those things, but if you're hearing about it for the first time and you haven't emailed Let's Play at greenronin.com so that we can get you plugged into all the right channels, get you all the right details, do so today. So, yes, Dustin says, yay, a good celebratory lap for you, Dustin. But send a note and ask us, or just say, hey, I'm interested in creating for the Creators Alliance. We have got, and I want to say we have almost 50 people signed up.
That's great. And I am really looking forward to that material coming out, and that community pulling together. My main advice for people who want to do that, beyond right to Let's Play, because that's step one, regardless. My main advice is find a community of people who are doing things like that and listen to them and ask them if you have questions, because those communities can be great and helpful. And we just had Meredith on, and she was talking about how these communities will organize themselves and can be very helpful for onboarding people and assisting them with questions they've got. But also, I honestly recommend start with something pretty small, because if you are doing a small product, you can get through the whole process and see what all the steps are and get a better grasp for how much time and money and effort and frustration all of that is going to take, and get through the process. And if what you do is say, hey, I'm going to write up an inn, right? This is one inn. It has 6 rooms. I've got a cool name for it. And then you're already going, okay, I've got to find a cover, and I've got to handle a map, and I've got to name it, and I've got to come up with trade dress, and I've got to look at these templates. That is a great way to walk into that on a smaller scale, unless you're already experienced doing this stuff, right? If you already are a publisher, or you have put together, I don't remember if anyone else remembers the old netbooks, but in the 90s, there were these really professional looking netbooks of fan material, the netbooks of Fire Magic or whatever, which is actually one of the ways that I got practice to break into the industry. And so if you have already done all those things, then you can put a bigger book, but you still want to have a test case that you're going to put through the system, so you can see what it's like to make an account with the One Bookshelf group that are handling this, and what's it like to upload, and what tools are available.
Which is the larger part of creativity being what it is, and a lot of folks can bend that and sort of fill in a template and all that, but there's a whole lot of steps and things that you want to, I won't say a whole lot. It is definitely learnable, but it's to be learned. I wanted to say, Owen, you inadvertently shared my idea, because I'm putting together some content for the Age Creators Alliance, and it's called the O-In. The many-roomed O-In, and it'll be filled with many surprises.
But there are no shutters over any of the windows, because they can't be flapped.
That's quit. Are you reading a journal? How are you getting this information? Who's leaking all my good stuff?
I have told people for years that I have a network of church mice that listen in on people's good ideas and then bring them back to me.
So I'm laughing because both this is hilarious, but because I'm giving you the business as I like to do, but also sometimes when we're broadcasting, we have neighbors above in the I'm in a studio in a bookstore, in a closed bookstore because of pandemic, but above me is a tattoo parlor. And they like to drag a chair across the floor. And today I was pre-recording some stuff, and every time I would record, it just really sounded like just restrained flatulence, just continually going off. And so if you do hear that, it is indeed not unrestrained flatulence, but actual chairs being dragged across the floor upstairs. So apologies for that. Let's see. Apook says, this is an interesting question. If someone asks, why should I try Fantasy Age instead of sticking with DMD or Pathfinder, what do you suggest we tell them?
I saw that question from Apuk, and it's a great question. There are a couple of different approaches you can take, right? I think the best answer, if you're up to it, is always to say, well, why don't I run you a game of Fantasy Age with some other friends and you can see if you like it, right? Because the best way to get anyone involved in any role-playing game almost is to say, well, let's play a game and see if anybody likes it. And we've got a bunch of free fast play AGE things up on greenranine.com so that you can look at the modern age fast play, and I think we've got a Blue Rose, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, quick starts.
If they are really someone that wants to hear what is different about this game, for me, it's all about the stunt system. The fact that there is a system that allows you access to spectacular maneuvers, but they range in impact so that the same thing, the same choice is not always your best choice every round, and that they come up more often than a traditional D20 system critical hit, but do not necessarily have the same impact on game because you might get a one stunt point stunt event. And that stunt points are set up for exploration and combat and social encounters. To me, that gives a very different feel to play, whereas you still only have to understand how 3 or in the upcoming core rulebook 4 classes work. So it takes a lot less time to make a character. The characters still have vast flexibility in what they do and what they're good at and how they develop. And the core system of the game is designed to create interesting outcomes and choices regularly, but not all the time, so that you've got a flow of events that is not a simple case of, this is my best choice, so I will do this one thing all the time.
I love it. Let's see here. Jason says, what? No mole people? Well, so the mole people are the ones that are doing the tattoos. We're just one level underneath the mole people. We're trying to keep quiet ourselves so they don't,
Yeah, we have some lomelings here.
Yeah.
They are currently playing video games, actually, so they might chitter for us, but for the no, the lomelings say they're not going to chitter. For the most part, when I am broadcasting for Green Ronin, the lomelings, my subterranean allies, try not to interrupt the broadcast because they know this is a serious work-related thing.
A very professional organization and a professional operation.
Absolutely, yes.
All day, all night. Apook says, great answer and thanks. Well, thank you, Apook, for the question. You are well and truly thanked. Terry Advent says, yes, stunts are the best. They make encounters less predictable. More fun, more spicy, gives it some texture. And
for me, an important part of any role-playing game is making interesting choices. And a lot of that is just the nature of the game, right? You see a cave, what do you do? And the fact that unlike a video game, you can try anything, right? If you're playing a video game and you see a cave, what do you do? And you're like, well, I'm going to pick up a rock and hug it inside and see if I hit anything. If the video game's not programmed to do that, you can't do that. Whereas in a tabletop role-playing game, if the GM has a good grasp on the basics of the rules, you can be like, okay, make a thrown attack and let's see what you get. And then with Fantasy Age specifically, you can, do stunt points. So you're like, ooh, I got 5 stunt points. I'm gonna do a mighty damage on this rock hurling and maybe an angry chimera that is one part bear, one part sea serpent, and one part angry flame breathing nightmare horse comes out with a rock in one of its eyes, and it's on. But those are the kinds of things where, by having the stunt point system, we can ramp up the interestingness, so that one common objection in a lot of role-playing games is that once you figured out what your character's most effective maneuver is, you're doing that thing all the time, and that kind of drains the choice out of it.
I love it. Now, as per the usual, I look at the clock and we have like 2 minutes left. I mean, thereabouts, actually. We'll say 7 minutes, actually. But because, time flies when we're having fun. Owen, do me a favor. You've got so much stuff going on. Share with me the what you got cooking. What's going on in the other realms that you oversee?
The non-Green Ronin realms of Owen Casey Stevens.
Yeah.
So I've got my ongoing blog stuff at owencasey.stevens.com, where recently I found a letter that I had written to a freelancer as a developer of role-playing game material. And I thought, some of these questions that this freelancer have asked, these are great questions. And I don't ever get a chance to give people as much feedback as I would like. So maybe I should make this public. And so I started the series, letters from a tabletop RPG dev to freelancers, which is a few articles now. And one of them, in fact, has been, I got another one coming out Monday that's actually going to be letters from a publisher to me about developer test checklists. But it's just a place where one of the things I have started doing is taking actual correspondence that I've had over my 24-year career back and forth, and cleaning it up and removing any identifying material, but actually showing people what communication between different stages in the industry look like. It's also a place where my Patreon supports me putting up game materials and short little stories and things like that. So that's been an ongoing thing. I am wrapping up my work on the Grimmer Space Corps rulebook, which is a Starfinder role-playing game expansion being put out by Iron GM with my good friends Ron Barton and Lou Agresta. And Lou and I go back. Actually, Facebook just reminded me that I think we became Facebook friends 12 years ago, and we knew each other before that. And still looming out there is 52 and 52, which is about to start having products come out for it on a regular basis again, so we can try to get it all wrapped up by the end of this year or just a little after. People have been really patient, and obviously between moving 3 times in the past year and some both very, very common to everyone disasters and panics and some very private tragedy and problems that we've been having to deal with, we're behind on that, but the plan is still to produce it. So for the Patreon, it's Patreon/Owen Casey Stevens. The 52 and 52 is still only available at the opengamingstore.com. And you can go to owencasey.stevens.com and find links to all of that stuff. And that is really the focus of what I've been working on. I need to get these old projects off my plate before I start anything new. I'm always sort of, I have shiny object syndrome, in that if I have a new idea, like, ooh, I could write a brand new role-playing game where all you have are descriptors, and dwarf is a descriptor, but it's no different from fighter. So you can be a dwarf, elf, gnome if you want, or you can be a fighter, magic user, thief if you want, because everyone gets 3 descriptors and they have their own rules. And I like that idea, but I cannot spend time on it while obviously the core rulebook needs to be wrapped up. Then we'll then be very quickly moving on to the next set of stages for things for Fantasy Age to come out after that. I've got adventure support I want to put together.
You're also going to be doing your own content for the Age Creators Alliance.
I am also going to be doing my own content for the Age Creators Alliance, which again, I can't get to that until other things are further along the line.
Yeah.
But those are all things I want to get to. But the real big thing hanging over there is 52 and 52, which needs to go back to producing regular content.
All right. Well, that is a ton of stuff, Owen, and I know that feeling of just like you got to get some of these dustier sort of boxes unpacked in the project pipeline. I get that 100%. We have, folks will be pleased to note that we have actually sat down and we have mapped out the rest of the coming month, and I think 1 week into June, maybe we're almost into the summer, which I'm very, very excited about. And we have got lots of good stuff cooking. We're going to actually be putting some of those. We don't want to schedule things too far in advance, just given the fluid nature of things. So we know one thing for sure, and that is Thursdays is for ThursdAGE with Owen Casey Stevens. In addition, Mondays, 2 p.m. Pacific, we'll have Mutants and Masterminds Monday with Crystal Frazier and Steve Kenson. And of course, your disembodied pal, Troy. But yeah, this has been another wonderful episode. I want to get a sense from you when it comes to the Age Creators Alliance and all that kind of good stuff. When I say you, I mean our fans. If you've got questions and things, I know that there's some people who are waiting on some stuff. I was waylaid for a couple of days, but I'm back in the saddle and I'm ready to kind of dive in and help you out. But yeah, until we talk to you again, if you've got questions, you've got ideas, you've got something you want maybe Owen to stat something up, draw us a picture. You cannot be somebody who is already drawn for us. That means Stan and who else has done some stuff for us? We've had Stan. We've had
Jacob Blackman's done
Jacob has done some stuff as well. So this is I love that. And then Scott Alfred says, I come to these streams for two things: information and Troy's disembodied charm. Oh shucks, Scott. I bet you say that to all the Troys. But I will say to you, Owen, thanks for hanging out again. Another wonderful hour of ThursdAGE with you. And you are a delight and a treasure. And we will be back with you next Thursday. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.